We are Chris Lee and Blake
Are we?
Lovell of or are we of Southeastern 14, presented by Steaks. This is the Halloween Power Rankings edition. Dressing up was your idea. Um,
And
I
I
can
followed through.
only
So,
you were obviously Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago,
yeah, I am I don't
and
know.
just as surprised about it as I am.
Yeah, well, it was my idea. I will say that I just got behind and
Mhm.
it's life with a newborn and such, but yes, that just but I appreciate your enthusiasm. Let me just say that. Like I appreciate you being enthusiastic about my idea that I did not follow through with.
I will not have my cheese left out in the wind.
So
But anyway,
if you got that
um,
reference, hit the like button.
right. I'll tell you who does have its cheese left out in the wind entering week 10, with the chance to change that, though. We always start at the bottom in our power rankings. Vanderbilt has been there since the beginning. The Commodores are there again, a consensus last place in our countdown, which, of course, they would be at this point, given the record. Anyway, Vandy at 14, and I feel like Auburn has also become a fixture at 13. That's where the Tigers are again this week.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that our composite staff rankings here, as always, not just Chris and I, it's everyone on our staff. Not surprised that these are the bottom two teams, just given the fact that Missouri won, and that allowed them to move up a little bit compared to where they had been. But got a nice road win, but that kind of by default, I think, puts Auburn and Vanderbilt in these two spots. Vanderbilt's still winless, but like you said, perhaps with an opportunity this week to snap their losing streak. Meanwhile, Auburn gonna have another big challenge, I think, this week going on the road to play Mississippi State. So they've lost four in a row, and yeah, obviously two programs that you know. I think even if Vanderbilt wins, I don't know, do they move up? I mean, that's what I mean. Do we move South Carolina to the bottom? I don't think so. So I
Yeah.
think it's like even if Vanderbilt wins, I don't really know. Maybe they move ahead of Auburn. I don't, at that point, perhaps. But these are probably your bottom two teams, barring Auburn winning at Mississippi State and maybe swapping someone else in front of them. So
Okay, we have our only tie in the countdown
mm,
next, and we could probably settle it on the field, which these two teams did last week. We have South Carolina and Texas A&M tied
hmm,
in our staff vote.
that's interesting
I,
because
I would have gone South Carolina. I would have gone South Carolina because if it's win head to head, but I mean, it is what it is. We take a vote, and the results are what they are. Next, I think the highest rank this team has been all year, the Missouri Tigers at 10 after a big road win this week in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, I was really curious about these three teams in terms of our staff, our individual rankings, wondering where everybody would put them. Because it is, as we always say, we've gotten to week 10 now, so it's like the head to head matters, but it's still the overall picture. And I think these were the three teams that I had no idea what order they'd be in. I'm not surprised that Missouri is the highest of the group, just given what they did to South Carolina and the fact again that they won because A&M has not done that in a long time. They've lost four in a row. Obviously, South Carolina, had beaten A&M and had beaten Kentucky, but I think it's probably just the way that they lost, to Missouri. I think you certainly slide them down, back down to where they were in our rankings for a while there, even as a team that was in the top 25. But yeah, they're going to be in the double digits here in our SEC rankings now. But I mean, we kept saying it about Missouri, and the thing is, they were kind of in that stretch where they just could not figure out how to win some of those games. They figured out how to win the Vanderbilt game. It wasn't pretty, but it's just their defense. Finally able to give them that sort of. I mean, I don't know, signature win is maybe too strong of a word, but it was a road win against a top 25 team, and so I think yeah, it probably warrants Missouri moving them up here into that number 10 spot.
By the way, quick note on South Carolina. Gamecocks have been outgained this season, -8 in turnovers. So just a weird team. Carolina 5-3, a lot of that on the strength of special teams and just great timing. But in any case, the number 9 team in our power rankings is the Florida Gators, who were a no-show in the first half, made it interesting against Georgia for a while, and now head to A&M this weekend with the chance to pick up a big win, perhaps.
Yeah, like I say, I'm always interested because I don't see these beforehand, so I don't really know what the composite ranking is going to be. But I think for Florida, like they're just one of those teams, right? That I think I told you this, like, what was it last week? I was like, I still feel like I don't know what to make of Florida, and like we're 10 weeks into the season, right? And it's just like because they did show some flashes, I think, against Georgia.
Yeah.
They did make it interesting there at one point, and obviously gave up a lot to Jaden Daniels and LSU the week prior. Played close, played Tennessee close in Knoxville a while back, a month ago, and it's just, yeah, I mean, they're just. I think Florida's that team right now that is not there yet, but doesn't necessarily feel like they're that far away. Now, obviously, what does that look like going into next season? Kind of what the roster and what Billy Napier can do with it will be a significant portion of their future success. But um, at the same time, it's like maybe these last four games are really where we make our final sort of decision on Florida because it's the only choice because these are the last four games of the season. At A&M, home against South Carolina, at Vanderbilt, at Florida State. I mean, realistically, Chris, all of those are winnable games for the Gators here, and I think that's where we really sort of find out what was the ceiling for this particular Gators team.
Yeah, Florida's a weird team. And we talk about strength of schedule a lot. I'm not sure we've talked about it with Florida. ESPN's FPI has Florida having played the third toughest strength of schedule so far. Jeff
Because that
Sagrin has
Utah
the game
game, yeah,
four.
has to factor
Well,
in.
that
Yeah.
I mean, and look at the game. Okay, Florida has beaten Utah. Everybody's just about forgotten that, given it was opening week of the year. Came that close to winning in Knoxville when Anthony Richardson went off. But on the other hand, Florida I think, has scored 1 point more than its opponents this year. It's been outgained. So just some kind of weird stuff here. Although per play, Florida almost a yard better than its opposition. Florida's been a sneakily efficient offensive team, also +6 in turnovers. So just there's stuff all over the map there with the Gators. I mean, this is the team that after beating Utah a couple weeks later nearly lost to South Florida.
Yeah.
So just an odd team. Anyway, rounding out the bottom half of our countdown, another team that's been a little bit odd, the Kentucky Wildcats at number 8, coming off a disastrous 44-6 loss in Knoxville.
Yeah, Kentucky moving on down after that. But it's the SEC East standings are so fascinating right now, right? Because Missouri is technically in third, right? Because it's Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri has moved up because they have the head-to-head over South Carolina, who beat Kentucky. So they have the three-way, at 2 and 3, and then Florida's at 1 and 4, Vanderbilt's at 0 and 4. But I think with Kentucky, it's just. I mean, it has been a mixed bag. Like, there's no other way to put it. I mean, like we said, it's. I think finding a way to win that Mississippi State game now feels way more important because that was one where, like we talked about, it felt like going in Mississippi State was the one with all the momentum, but Kentucky finds a way to win that, coming off that loss to South Carolina and that close loss at Ole Miss. Now it's how do you respond after the just drubbing they took at Tennessee, and I think that's where because before, right, I think if we were looking at Kentucky from a power ranking standpoint, and let's say they played Tennessee close, and even if they lose the game, I think your opinion on Kentucky doesn't change all that much. If not, makes you more optimistic, perhaps going forward, especially circling that Georgia game on November 19th. But now, I think after that, it's just sort of like, man, what do we do with Kentucky here? So I'm not surprised to see them slide down a bit. And obviously, they really need to win these next two games against Missouri and Vanderbilt. They'll be favored in both, but that Missouri one looks a bit tougher too, given the recent play. So
Before we get to the top half of our power rankings, shout out to our partners at Stakes. Big games coming up in the SEC this week to add some extra excitement. We at Southeastern 14 went ahead and made some predictions in the Stakes app, or I should say are going to make them. We haven't made them yet. We want to hear from you guys if you agree or disagree with our takes. So go to playwithstakes.com/14. That is STAKES. Sign up for Stakes. Place your predictions, whether you like ours or you don't like ours. And if you use the invite code Southeastern14 when you sign up, you'll get a double welcome bonus Free to join, free to play. It's not a betting app. It is just a predictions app, and it's a lot of fun. It's free, and you can win stuff. What's not to like? So go to Stakes today. Again, that promo code Southeastern 14. Okay, the number 7 team in our countdown, the Arkansas Razorbacks, who are starting to look pretty good again, at least offensively. The defense is going to be an issue. I think we know that by now, but Arkansas has been a fun team to watch and a couple of really nice offensive performances in back-to-back games now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I'm going to assume that Mississippi State's our number 6 team. I think that's one where those teams to me, and I know Mississippi State beat Arkansas head to head, and that's probably the differentiator here. But I look at both those teams and kind of the perhaps trajectory, and I think it's hard to judge Mississippi State too, right? Because they're coming off that loss to Alabama, and I think a lot of teams would have been in a very tough spot coming off, against an angry Alabama team in that spot. And so I don't know exactly, but again, the separators that Mississippi State beat Arkansas handily. But I think that's where the difference is with Arkansas, as you said. They're playing a lot better now, and coming off of 2 very good offensive performances specifically, and kind of feeling good about where they're at right now, heading into this game against Liberty, which, as we said, it's another top 25 game on their schedule. The opponents, Hugh Freeze team that is playing some really good football right now. So, yeah, I mean, Arkansas, just by nature of the schedule, able to win these last 2 and just kind of stop that skid, and feels like they're in a better spot and are playing a bit better than they were, several weeks ago at this point. So,
Okay, yeah. If you want to look at Arkansas and State, State is 6. The computers are pretty clear on State as the better team. Arkansas outscoring opponents 1.9 a game, State 8.9. State the number 5 strength of schedule in both ESPN's FPI and Jeff Sagarin. Arkansas 13 and 14 in those. Yards per play, Arkansas almost dead even. A 0.01 difference in its favor. State 0.27 in yards per play difference. State special teams are a lot better. Arkansas's are pretty bad. State +4 in turnovers, Arkansas -1. So if you want to dig into the numbers a little bit, there they are. Okay, it gets a lot easier from here. Ole Miss at 5 and LSU at 4, and that's one of those where the teams are pretty close, and they played a couple weeks ago, albeit that game was in Baton Rouge, but LSU blew out Ole Miss, and I think that settled it for our rankers.
yeah, I mean, I think to me, and this is not a slight on Ole Miss, but given the week we're in, I think the cutoff is at 4 here in terms of, our top 4 teams are about to play each other this week. And I think if you're talking about Ole Miss specifically, I thought it was nice for them to get that win at A&M. Like we said, I know A&M has certainly been a team that, we talked about a lot, sliding in the wrong direction. But I think just bouncing back, finding a way to win that game, that was huge for kind of the psyche for Ole Miss, given that that game at LSU obviously did not go the way they wanted it to in any way, shape, or form, getting beat the way they did. And now, you've got an Ole Miss team here that I think still feels like it's part of that, part of this upper echelon, which, they're a top 5 team in our power rankings. But I think they still feel like, they want to be able to prove they belong in that group. And here's where, that opportunity presents itself, right? Because you get the week off and then you get ready to host Alabama on November the 12th and still have to go to Arkansas, still got to play Mississippi State. But, this is where I think for Ole Miss, this getting this week off, seeing what happens with Bama LSU, getting your chance to really prove, that you belong in that top part of the group, which, we've had them there a lot, pretty much the majority of the season now. There's no bigger opportunity than that in terms of what's left on their schedule than what they'll have on November the 12th.
I don't know what the 538 odds are on Ole Miss for the playoffs this week, but I mean, Ole Miss could still get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot, like we said, there's a lot to be decided in
Yes.
these two games this week, but there's still a lot more to be decided after that, right? Because in the SEC West, you do still have 3 teams that are at 4-1, Alabama, LSU, Miss, and Ole Miss. And yeah, so like there's still a lot more to figure out there. Georgia, Tennessee, right? It's a lot more clear in terms of whoever wins that game. There's really no one else outside of the loser of that game that has a realistic shot to get to the SEC championship. But with these, it's pretty much Alabama, LSU. We talked about it, Chris. Almost was like it's an elimination game essentially when you think about kind of where both teams are. Because if LSU loses, they'll have a third loss on the season. And again, we're talking about this beyond just the SEC portion. We're talking about the overall picture. Alabama would have a second loss, and then Ole Miss though still only has one loss, and so yeah, that's it's an interesting setup for those teams the rest of the way.
Okay, no surprise, Alabama, the number 3 team in our countdown this week. Again, people may not realize this. As much as Alabama's defense has been embattled, it's the Crimson Tide that have the best yards per play against among SEC teams at 4.25. Alabama really does some very un-Alabama-like things, -3 in turnovers, 72 penalty yards a game, which is one of the worst in the country. But anyway, the Crimson Tide, of course, with the big game against LSU this week, and that will have a lot to say in the college football playoff race and, of course, in the SEC championship race, too.
Yep, will be the third of 4 straight top 25 games for Alabama, at Tennessee, Mississippi State, at LSU here, and then at Ole Miss. So, I mean, we said their schedule, right? I mean, man, you talk about all the road trips this team will have played this season at Texas, at Arkansas, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Ole Miss. I mean,
Ooh,
that's a
brutal.
brutal road slate. And so that's where the penalties and those kind of things come in. And we talked about that a lot in our Alabama LSU preview video. So if you haven't watched that yet, go check it out. Lots of discussion on kind of those potential factors like that. But Alabama's still here. They haven't gone anywhere. Don't everyone just run off after a 3-point loss at Tennessee. So yeah, the Tide bounced back in a big way against Mississippi State, had the week off to prepare, and now get ready for, as we said, another game of the year candidates in Baton Rouge.
Okay, it was close at the top spot, but we've got Georgia edging Tennessee for number 1. Doesn't really matter. It's going to settle itself on the field this week. But if you want to know some stats, here they are. Scoring margin, Georgia 31.3, Tennessee 28.4. The computers actually have Georgia having a tougher strength of schedule. That can't be right.
I don't know what the computers have watched then, because there's no chance that's the case. Not knocking Georgia, but Tennessee's got the best strength of schedule, and I can't even.
Well, we talked about this before. What is knocking Tennessee down in the strength of schedule rankings is playing Akron and Bowling Green and UT Martin.
Right.
Now, I don't know. To me, I'm more looking at who you played than I am whatever number a computer spits out, because look, let's face it, if you are a national title contender, you're going to beat the number 60 team in the country. You're going to beat the number 130 team in the country. It doesn't really matter so much, but the computers are going to see it a little differently. They're going to find that differentiation between those two things. I think that's really what's hurt Tennessee a little bit on strength of schedule. Now, ESPN FPI, I've said all year, I thought Tennessee had the best resume in the country. ESPN's resume metric at FPI does agree with me there too. So no surprise. Let's see some other things. Yards per play, Georgia at a 2.7 difference, Tennessee 2.2. Turnovers, Tennessee +8, Georgia 0, and special teams are both about the same.
Yeah, I mean, on the schedule thing, like I said, I mean, I think it's Georgia has what I mean. They've not played anyone bad, I suppose, outside of Kent State, right? Because even Samford has a good record. I think they're 7-1. I mean, and that's the thing is like, I mean, in comparison to like Missouri, Auburn, those kind of teams, Vanderbilt, like they've been bad at times in SEC world, right? But I think compared to playing, like you said, a Tennessee who's played a Ball State, played an Akron, UT Martin, teams that all of those SEC teams are probably beating. I wonder if that's just part of it as well. And you talked about just kind of the numbers with the computers and what they look at. But I think it's still, to me, the fact that Tennessee has as many, 5 top 25 wins now to this point.
Yeah.
With Pitt, Florida, LSU, Alabama, Kentucky. So I think I would still give Tennessee the edge there. Although like I said, I'm not going to knock what Georgia's done, but I think in comparison, has Georgia played less of the, I don't know, whatever or whatever wording you want to use for the teams that aren't as good? Yes, but does Georgia have the amount of quality wins that Tennessee has at this point? No, overall, I suppose. But guess what? I say all this because it doesn't matter. We know that number one in our power rankings next week is going to be the winner of this Georgia and Tennessee game,
Yeah.
and it's as clear as that. There's no other discussion to be had. The winner will be number one in our power rankings next week, and we'll certainly set up a fantastic finish the rest of the way.
Yeah. Okay. I double checked this and I was wrong. Georgia's got the number 5 strength of resume on ESPN's
Okay.
FBI. It is 75 in strength of schedule. That I was like, that couldn't be right, what I read.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I looked that up again. In fact, Georgia's strength of schedule, 75, that is hands down the worst in the SEC. That is by ESPN's strength of schedule formula. I mean, these are sometimes all over the place. The next easiest schedule, according to ESPN's FPI, is Ole Miss at 54. And then the next easiest would be South Carolina at 31. So there's in a lot of these cases, some of these stats and things certainly can be explained by pretty big discrepancies in strength of schedule.
There you go. And we will have one more team adding a big boost to their resume on Saturday. So,
Blake, are we taking the day off around here?
again, if you got that reference, hit the like button. Many more of those to come on your Halloween edition of our videos, which will include some basketball videos as well. But by the way, if you haven't checked out all of our preview videos we've done for all the games in Week 10, do that now. Obviously, 2 big headliners. Tennessee at Georgia, Alabama at LSU, but also thoughts on all the other games in the SEC.
Well, I thought I put that on T for you. I did not. No, we are not taking the day off around here.
Yeah, I know we're not. I was just trying to get more
Because
likes. So yeah.
right. Yeah. We need to be liked. Not really. But although it does help. Okay. Yeah, we've got SEC basketball previews. We're gonna do a couple of those today, Texas A&M and Florida. So those will be up soon on our channel. We've already done what, 8?
I can't keep up anymore.
I
They're
think
there.
so.
Go find them in the playlist, the SEC basketball playlist if you want that.
Yeah, if you are a basketball fan of an SEC team, we either have or will have a very in-depth preview of your team. These have been running 30 to 45 minutes, usually closer to the latter. So I have a couple more up today. We've got preseason basketball power rankings coming tomorrow. That'll be fun. We'll do some player rankings in SEC basketball. That'll be fun. And, of course, just a ton of content around football. Trying to line up some guests as we speak. So anyway, best way to get all that is hit that subscribe button so that you see everything we do here. Thanks for watching us here at Southeastern 14 presented by Steaks. We'll see you again soon.